I'm a researcher currently working at Khalifa University in Abu Dhabi. My background is in mechanical engineering. I did my bachelor's from Sardar Vallabhbhai National Institute of Technology, Surat, SVNIT. And then I moved on to do a master's at what was originally Masdar Institute, and now it is part of Khalifa University. There was a merger of the two colleges. After my graduation from my master's, I continued to work as a research engineer. I'm sorry about that. I continue to work as a research engineer in the same university that I studied, and currently I'm working in the geomechanics lab. So my area of specialty is uh, solid mechanics, like damage and fracture mechanics, understanding how materials behave under different stress conditions. So that is what I know. I have also done a little bit of modeling.
Is it mostly experimental or simulation that you do?
Mostly experimental, actually.
Okay.
Both my thesis and my research work currently both are almost entirely experimental.
And you
but
said
I have used.
You say you are a researcher, but you're not a PhD student though, right? You're a master's student.
I'm not. Yes, I'm not a PhD student.
Okay, got it.
I'm a master's. So yeah, I have used Abacus to do some simulations as part of my thesis, but I won't claim to be an expert. I still have a long way to go in that.
That's fine.
As far as my short-term goals are concerned, my first priority is to get into a top 50 college for a PhD program, preferably in mechanical engineering or in material science.
Where?
Ideally in Canada or in Europe.
Canada or Europe?
Yes, okay. That is my current preference. I'm keeping immigration also in mind. That matters to me.
Okay.
So I would ideally want to get into a top school in Canada or Europe. And long term, I see myself as a faculty member in one of these research-based universities.
Where?
In Canada or Europe.
Okay.
But on that, I'm more flexible. I would love to work in the US after getting my PhD as well.
What about going back to India?
If given a good opportunity, yes. But that would mean like going and working in IIC Bangalore or one of the IITs or for ISRO, DRDO, that kind of an option.
Okay, got it. And let me ask you, normally you are I guess the first person I'm speaking who went to do his master's in Middle East. Is there a reason behind it?
Okay. Actually, I grew up in the Middle East.
Okay.
I'm a Gulf kid.
Oh, you are a hybrid.
Yes, sort of.
Okay, I understand now. Okay. So you are more comfortable, So you were born there or you grew up there? Like your parents used to maybe working there, right?
Yes, I grew up here actually. I was born in India, but I grew up in the Middle East.
So still your parents are in Middle East or?
Yes, they're still in the Middle East.
Okay. So because I heard like you can't, I heard this like you cannot live permanently there like people live in US or something. Once you're out of job, you have to go back, right?
Yes, so it's a visa-based system. So your visa depends on your employer. Once that's over, you have to go back home.
So your father who is working there, he has a working visa, so he's working and you grew up there.
Exactly.
So you are in Abu Dhabi or you are in your parents are in Abu Dhabi or they are somewhere else?
No, they are in Oman actually.
Okay.
But I'm in Abu Dhabi. It's very nearby.
So you have never lived in India?
I have. I did my bachelor's in India.
Yeah, you did, right? Okay. So you did your +2 in Abu Dhabi, then you did your bachelor's in India, and then you are back again, is that?
Yes, I did my +2 in Oman, but and then I came to India.
Got it. Interesting. So let me ask you, why did you, when you were in Abu Dhabi, Oman, you did your +2 there, how come you decided that you have to do your bachelor's in India? What was the reason?
So the main reasoning, apart from the cost, was my dad's insistence on me learning the culture, to go back to India and go back to the roots. Yeah.
Go back to roots, learn some culture. Okay, got it.
That was the main goal.
Okay, understand. But did you have to give a certain kind of exam, or you were like a NRI candidate who was paying a little bit more, but not as less as a Indian student will pay?
The second category. So I had to write the SAT exam.
Uh-huh.
So they had the cutoffs.
Okay, okay.
So in the
So
SAT, I don't remember my score.
so they oh, no, no, yeah, that's a good point because so you're saying that they take SAT score for an admission. They do that.
Yes,
In
yes, they
every
do that.
university do that in India, or there are certain ones who do?
So there was a program called the DASA scheme back
Right.
in the day
Right,
when I
right.
studied.
Uh-huh.
So for NRI students, this was a direct admission program. So instead of writing the AIEEE or I don't know, now it's called the IIT JEE. So instead of writing that, we can write SAT, and if we get good scores, we could get into one of the NITs or IITs, depending on our scores.
No, no, I remember because I when I went to IIT for my education, we had some DASA candidates there
I see.
From Middle East. I know that.
I see. Okay.
We have couple of them, not a lot. Okay, I understand your situation now. Okay.
Okay.
But is it the one question I want to ask you? Do you have another option where you say, if I get a chance, I probably would become a faculty in Middle East, or you want to get out from there?
After I would love to do my PhD abroad, but
Yeah,
if I
yeah,
get a
yeah. After
faculty
that,
position,
after that, I'm saying.
yeah, yes, I would really love to come back if I get a position
Okay.
here. Yeah.
So basically, if you get a good option, you're ready to come back to India, in Middle East or Europe, or so
Right.
that is not a problem for that option is open.
Yeah,
Okay, good,
that's not an issue.
got it.
My main objective is to get a good platform to start.
I understand. Okay, okay, I understand completely. Okay, and I have some questions from you, I believe. Hang on, let me
Yes.
take a look. Okay, long-term ambitions. So yeah, I guess you talked about that. Current understanding, blah blah blah. Okay, so another question I have for you is, you said you want to do your PhD in material science or something, right? You said so.
Yes.
And what's your department right now? Is it a civil
Mechanical
engineering?
engineering.
Mechanic. But they are
Mechanical.
doing a lot of work on geomechanics, right?
Yes.
Is that
Yes.
very common there? For a mechanical engineering to do something which a mining engineering or a civil engineering department will do?
So over here, the oil industry is pretty prominent.
Right,
So a
right.
lot of the projects are related to that. So I'm also working on an oil and gas related project. So even though I'm by qualification a mechanical engineer, most of the work I do is material testing and like simulating certain oil and gas processes in the lab.
Understood, understood. Okay. I mean, the reason why I'm very curious because my bachelor's was in mining engineering and I did a lot of stuff what you're talking about. So
Oh, I see.
yeah, but I moved to material science, so that's the reason I'm saying. And I think you are doing the right thing by thinking the same way. To be honest.
Is it an easy transition, sir, to go from what I'm doing right now into material science?
Yeah. I mean, I can, as I said, you are a person whom I can give you advice because I did the same thing, right? So I can tell you
Okay.
what's the. So I did my. If you look my LinkedIn profile, my bachelor's was in mining engineering, and my
Okay.
master's I came to US. I did in civil engineering.
Right.
Basically, my focus was in geomechanics. So a lot of
Okay.
testing on soil and things like that.
Right.
But then for my PhD I moved to mechanical engineering, but the focus was material science and solid
Okay.
mechanics. Yeah, I was working most on alloys and things like that. Not
Okay.
yeah. So I think that's the right thing to. To be honest with you, the basic principles of material science are the same,
Right.
or the solid mechanics. I actually was speaking to someone yesterday, yeah, I think, and I was telling him the same thing that as far as the basic principle of materials, you can apply it anywhere.
Right.
As far as your question is concerned, whether the transition is easy or not, that is up to you how you make your profile and how you are able to convince the professor. Because to be honest with
Okay.
you, so when I moved from mining engineering to civil engineering, so I was interested in rock mechanics. That's what I enjoyed the most.
Oh,
And
wow. Okay.
yeah, we were doing some testing of rocks and all that, and in my undergrad project, and we did some project, and so I enjoyed mechanics, but I did not want to do mining engineering. So I said, what's
Okay.
the best I can go? Yeah, and because nobody's going to take me in electronics engineering, right? Even though if I'm
Right.
interested.
Yeah.
So I switched to civil engineering, and with the focus on geomechanics.
Okay.
And I liked it, and there I took a course on constructive modeling, plasticity, and all that, and I really enjoyed it. And then I thought, you know, that term plasticity I hear for the first time, because for a rock mechanics person, plasticity is not something you're aware of. And getting into
Right.
more, it is it's a deep mechanics if you get into plasticity, right? Because of ductility of
Right.
the nature. But anyway, so um, then I started contacting professors in mechanical engineering and material science that I'm interested and whatever. Um, I would say um, I was able to convince a professor, but it
Okay.
took time. It took a while because I
Okay.
remember when I sent my application to Texas University of Texas at Austin.
Austin.
The professor asked me so many questions, and even at the end he was no convinced. Although I thought that why he's asking so many questions, because to me it was all materials. I didn't care. And he was saying that why you want to transition, because the project I have is on metal sheet forming and this and that. And eventually the work I did on my PhD was on metal sheet forming, to be honest. So it doesn't
Okay.
matter. But what I'm saying is it took me a time to convince someone. So
Okay.
let's say for example, tomorrow you're going to apply for a PhD program at Waterloo or
Okay.
McMaster, right? And you say, I'm going to apply to University of McMaster or Waterloo or whatever top universities, and then you can say, okay, I'm going to apply in material science, and the projects over there are on additive manufacturing, the projects are on processing, the projects are on nanotechnology. So how are you going to convince a professor, right?
Yes.
So,
Yes.
so
That's it.
make sure when you write your statement of purpose, um, you should make sure when you write your statement of purpose you are most focused about the that what you're doing is a stepping stone
Okay.
this is not the end. What I want to do is I'm overall interested in material science. That's my big interest is I want to apply the
Right.
principles of what I have learned, solid mechanics or whatever,
Right.
in these areas, and that's where I want to land up.
Okay.
And another thing you probably would like to mention there is where you can say, if you look at my profile, most of the work I have done is interdisciplinary in nature,
Right.
and I was able to, you know, cross check or take some aspects of what I have learned in this particular area and apply it to another area, and this is something that has motivated me. And to be honest with you, as I said, even if you work in the area of bioengineering,
Hmm.
biomaterials, um, 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 alloys, composites, ceramics, it doesn't matter.
Okay.
You what the As I said, the basic principles are almost the same. And
Okay.
and, and let me tell
Okay.
you, there are many professors. The one thing that I think the professor look at anybody is your desire to learn, because there are a few people who
Okay.
have asked me this question also. Haven't you had a trouble, like you were saying, right? When you transition,
Yes.
of course you're gonna have trouble. When I was starting my PhD in mechanical engineering, for me, probably the undergrad who was doing in mechanical, he was probably more than me, right?
Right. Yeah.
But I'm not saying, I'm not denying I didn't do mistakes. I think I did a lot of mistakes and all that. But I think the question is, do you have a desire to learn?
Hmm.
So
Right.
if you are too comfortable what you do, and
Then it is a no.
you are fearful of any change, yes, you will be in trouble. But if you take that as a challenge, that's what it is. And to be honest with you, even what work I do now has nothing to do what I did in my PhD. So it's constantly changes.
Okay.
I
Okay.
mean, this is my third or fourth company, and every time I moved, I was doing something totally different, to be honest.
I see.
So what I'm saying is, this change happened to you in various parts of your career. It will happen. So
Okay.
same thing as you are saying, right? Whether this change is possible or not. So if you take this change as a challenge, I think it's good for you. You will learn a
Okay.
lot, you will get more confident. And to be honest with you, if you are gonna do a PhD in material science, it's an overarching field, enormous possibilities, and I'm glad that I took that chance and I did that, because my friends who did not do that still are stuck what they're doing, and I'm not sure if they like it. So, I think it's
Right.
a good thing to do, to be honest. I mean, can you imagine a guy who did his undergrad in mining engineering is working for a space company now? It's not possible, right? So many people say
Right.
that way, but what I'm saying, it's possible. It's almost possible. It's everything is possible. It depends on how you shape your career and how you look forward. Again, I'm not
Right.
trying to boast myself, but I have done that. I see that happening. So I won't say that it
Fair
can't
enough.
happen.
Fair enough.
In that case, I'm the living example of that. So
So I have a specific question
yeah, go ahead.
regarding what can I do to boost my chances to get into the top 50 colleges of the world? Like,
Okay.
I
Okay.
like,
I
for
can.
example,
Yeah.
ETH Zurich,
Yeah.
University of
Yeah.
British Columbia, like that.
Again, I can tell you more about US perspective, because
Okay.
but you can translate that information. What I think, number one,
Sure.
is your GRE and TOEFL score. So let's say,
Okay.
let me give you an example. If you have a good GRE and TOEFL score, and what your CV is, you can get into MIT.
Okay. Oh wow. Okay.
But extremely good GRE TOEFL score, that's like the number one criteria.
So what would be considered a good one? I've put my GRE score in my CV, so you can see it. You can see my scores. It's
To
on
be
the.
honest with you, I am a old school person to look at those scores, but I'm pretty sure you were you. Let me see what's.
It's on the column on the side.
So you only have quant and verbal. There is nothing else.
GRE, quant, and verbal. That's all
Okay,
I
okay,
had
okay.
taken. Yeah.
So I think
Is there something else I should do? I
no,
don't
no,
know.
no. I don't know. I'm just asking you, because in my
Okay.
days there will be quant, verbal, and what else? There was another thing. There were three of them.
The subject test.
No, 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 no. There were
Oh,
quant.
the writing.
Yeah, I think something I remember.
Okay.
But maybe
I don't remember.
not nowadays.
Yeah.
I don't know. Okay. So again,
Okay.
I think your score is pretty high, to be honest. If so, my question to you, if with this score, a good statement of purpose,
Okay.
a good set of publications, I'm pretty. I don't think why you can't get into a and again, good references.
Okay.
Good references.
Uh,
I'm not sure. I don't think you will have any trouble getting into a good school and anywhere, to be honest.
okay. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Regarding my
As I said,
references.
so you have a good. See, let me give you an example why I'm saying that.
Okay.
See, the top schools, right? The top schools,
Yes.
they are very much peculiar about most of the time where the students are coming. So if you look at students who go to those schools are from IITs, and
Okay.
that's what you see there. But you also see people who are from the other universities too. But the reason in
Yes.
your case is different because you have already done your masters from Middle East, so your case is totally different here. So I would
Okay.
say whatever you did in your undergrad doesn't matter anymore. I think because you are already at in a good institute in the Middle East. I think that you can highlight as much as you can, and since you have a
Okay.
good score, to be honest with you, I don't see a problem why you can't. The only challenge you will have, as I said, is whether you are able to convince that professor. See, let me tell you one thing. The so I will tell you a story.
Okay.
When I was applying for my PhD program, I applied at Harvard, and I
Okay.
applied at University of Maryland, and I applied at Texas Austin. The reason I was not able to get at Texas Austin because the guy was very adamant. The reason
Okay.
I did not was not able to go reason I did not go to Harvard is because the professor was convinced, but even though it was a material science, the project was on earthquake engineering. Do you understand my
Oh,
point?
okay. I see. I see.
Still, I didn't have courage to convince a professor in a material science and engineering. It it's a
I see.
it is gonna take you a time to convince someone. unless and until you have done a project in that area or something like that. So the other way to be is, can you get involved in a project which are in those areas? You know what I mean?
I see. I see.
Not many professor, at least in my days, were that open. But now I speak to some of my friends who are professor now. They say
Right.
we don't care. We need people who
Okay.
we need person who is hardworking and who can deliver. Sometimes they say
Okay.
we enjoy working with someone who has a totally different perspective.
Hmm.
But I also have a case where I um, convinced someone to do that, and the guy was uh, is in trouble now. So
Oh, I see.
yeah. So as I said, it can go both ways, but it's really hard to say how you will perform versus how I perform versus how someone else has performed, because as I said, I was very interested in electronics engineering, and let's say if somebody would have given me admission and PhD in electronics engineering, would I have performed? So I was overlapping, but remember,
Right.
what we are talking about is you're keeping your core strength the same. So let's say even if you're working in a project in material science, how far are you going?
From solid mechanics and things like that.
Exactly.
Okay.
So there has to be an overlap. So you can say
Hmm.
50-50 is good, but if it is
Okay.
90-10, I will be in trouble because you have to deliver. You understand my point?
Right. 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 Fair enough.
So
Yeah.
keep that in mind when you so, and many times that can happen. A professor in, let's say, in a mechanical engineering department or a material science department may have a project which has an overlap. But if
Right.
it's a project about ball milling and looking at high temperature corrosion of alloys, what are you gonna do? He's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
you will be in trouble. So again, if you have done some work in that area right now or something, it will be easy to convince. So then, let's say if there is a project on characterization of alloys, and looking at um, um, the multi-stress components, or how alloy behave under multi-axial conditions, you can say I can do it. Because
Right.
you know the mechanics and the stress, the behavior of material at that, maybe different material,
Conditions.
but you know the equations. But if the project is, as I said, is in a totally different direction,
Hmm.
and most of the time that is the case, so just keep that in mind. So
Is
even though
so
you have a
yeah.
good score, the other way I would say you can do it is, many times what happens is in civil engineering department or in other departments, sometimes professors do have projects that are in these areas. Because one of my friend,
Okay.
we went to undergrad together. He went to Carnegie Mellon and he was doing his PhD in computational mechanics,
Okay.
because the computational mechanics department was in civil engineering,
I see. Okay.
right?
Huh.
So just you have to do some research there. It's you. I
Perfect.
don't think you. I don't think that there is a case that you cannot get it, but you have to do some sort of a research there that would be
Okay.
able to convince a professor, and you may get lucky, to be honest. And sometimes that could also happen that if you're not in rush, you can get a chance. Let's say if everything gets opens up and you target a university in Europe, or if you get a chance to um, write to a professor at Waterloo or something, it is also possible that you said, can I get an admission? I'm going to work
Yes.
there for 6 months, and I will prove it before you are, if you can give me at least a partial funding, and
Right.
after 6 months you can make your decision. And that's what exactly I did when I
Okay.
went.
Oh. Okay.
So I told him, the ed professor, that I can do it, trust me, and
Yes.
would I be able to get at least some funding, so at least I don't want to pay for my tuition. And he was okay with that, although next day he gave me full funding, doesn't matter, but that
Okay.
was my pitch to him.
Fair enough. That's a good idea. Like.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is, it's about how you're gonna convince a person, and again, at the end it's gonna depend on you. But as I said, don't do 90-10 overlap. 50-50 is okay. You
Yeah.
will be in
Yeah.
trouble otherwise.
But that's a very good point.
Trust me, you will be
Uh,
in trouble.
So specifically, I'm looking at this field of additive manufacturing, which is coming up like a lot globally, like that. Are there any like your thoughts on like suppose I'm writing a letter to a professor on like trying to convince him to get me admission into his group for a PhD? Like anything that I can show from my current strengths, specifically that can like help me to get into 3D printing and additive manufacturing. Even for bioprocesses, like there is this professor who I'm looking at. He's working on 3D printing, like uh, like jawbones and
Unless I
like
think
scaffolding.
unless you find a project on 3D printing of rocks, it might be difficult. So to be honest with you, most of your work is on mechanics of materials, right?
Yes.
It has
Yes.
nothing to do with processing. So
Yes.
it would be challenging. So, there is another way to convince someone to be honest. Let me tell you how. If you have taken courses in those areas, then a professor can convince.
Okay.
There is another way. So let's say you have done your PhD or your master's in this topic, doesn't matter. But let's say if you have taken courses in processing, if you have taken courses in electrochemistry, if you have taken courses in, so that is a very good way to convince a professor too.
Okay. One thing I have done is I have used 3D printing for my lab work. So
Is used is,
that doesn't help.
I mean, used is like a very lame word.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if you have a machine, everybody has used 3D printing these days.
Yeah, that's true.
My point here is, again, try to understand. See, if I look at your CV, as I said, it's a CV of a person who has a background in mechanics of materials, plain and simple. Okay. If you can find a project who's in this area on characterization, on mechanics of alloys, polymers, biomaterials, I won't say you will have a trouble.
Okay.
But again, if you are going and say, hey, there's a project in the area of 3D printing and try to understand the pore sizes and how it's gonna affect the behavior of a material and then characterization, maybe the 80% of the work is in the processing. There is a part of characterization every time, but it's a very small part, right?
Right.
So how would you convince a professor? So you, as I said, if you have taken a courses in processing, in welding or something, then it will be more helpful. But again, as I said, it's going to totally depend on you how you convince someone, how firm you are, and I think your GRE and TOEFL score is going to help you a lot, to be honest.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, your GRE and
All
TOEFL
right.
score are gonna help you in putting things out quite a lot. Yeah.
Okay. So I have a question